Denver Nuggets headed to the NBA Finals, little tales from the couch, and then what it means for Denver and kind of recapping what their run has been like the last few years. And then, of course, the LeBron part of the story from last night. Let's pick it up at halftime. Lakers 73-58. All in for game 4, being down 0-3. Lakers historically have never won that game, by the way, being down 0-3. So that continues. But a lot of fight from the Lakers. I was really impressed, but it felt a bit like a fight where it's two fighters where you're just like, this other one can't really beat them. And even though they were up 73-58, at no point did I feel like, oh, it looks like Denver kind of mailed this one in. Malone got a tech early. You could see they were just into it, especially when you looked at how the minutes were all dispersed, and we'll get to that a little bit later here. Some of the shooting numbers at half, Denver fine 36% from 3, 8 of 22, but the story was the Lakers made everything from 3 and had 17 free throw attempts to 6 for Denver. LeBron is a story in the first half, 31 points, 11 of 13 shooting, absurd. Like, he just went on this stretch where you're like, he's not going to keep making this, and then everything was going in. But then we get to the third quarter, and Denver ran him off the floor 36-16. Denver wanted this one. They played 7 guys. No Christian Brown, who I think after a bad defensive switch in game 3 where it was pretty clear you get yelled at and yanked out of the game. I mean, that alone, you're going, wow, he's not even going to play his 8th guy because he's still pissed about a rotation potentially. Minute dispersal again, Jokic 45 minutes, Murray 43, Aaron Gordon 41, Michael Porter Jr. 41, and KCP 39 minutes. So they played their 7 guys. I was looking at the third quarter after the first half for LeBron going, okay, what is he going to be able to do here? Because even with the halftime break throughout the game and really throughout certain moments in the playoffs, like, this is what you get when it's 20 years in. This is uncharted territory for what LeBron is doing as a player. And I'd argue one of the most impressive things about him that I've seen even the last couple of years. Hell, I think I even started noticing it before the bubble season, where he would have these absurd nights, great box scores, and you didn't even feel like he had to dominate the game. And that's just how good he is at picking his spots. And it's happened more and more. It's just by necessity, because eventually, as mythical as he is, there are going to be moments where he actually looks human, even though he didn't look human in the first half. So I felt like, coasting, I don't even mean as a negative here with LeBron. I just think it's a necessity. And he ended up scoring 6 points in the third quarter, but it was over the last 240 of the third. So you're looking at that part of it going, is this going to be enough? So Denver takes the lead after the third quarter run, 94-89 heading into it. I saw a Celtics promo, and it was weird because I went, oh, Celtics Heat. By the way, Heat finally favored in one of these games, -1.5 on FanDuel this morning. I'm looking at it going, I don't even want to watch that game. It's going to be really interesting to see a Lakers team against what I believe is a better opponent here, fighting, where I have no idea, although leaning towards is it going to get ugly tonight for the Celtics in Miami. Anyway, we'll worry about that tomorrow. Jeff Van Gundy kept talking about LeBron wanting him on the post more, and I get his point. And so I started, tracking paint touches in the fourth quarter for LeBron, because I thought, if he's this tired, are we going to see that? Are we going to see fight from somebody knowing that he's outmanned and he's not as good as their best player? Like, what are we going to see? And we actually did see a lot from LeBron, I thought, in the fourth quarter. I tracked it as 9 paint touches where he had the ball in the paint area. I could be off by 1 there. But I do understand Van Gundy's point, because every time the Lakers ran something that didn't involve LeBron getting some kind of touch, it was kind of chunky is one of my favorite terms now after succession. There was a lot of possessions where I felt like the Lakers were getting stuck in the left corner and then trying to figure out how to drive out of there. Schroeder had a couple. Reeves had one. Side note for the kids out there, watch Reeves on his baseline drives. He doesn't drive in a straight line all the time. Normally you're so excited to kind of get any baseline. Like when you were younger, they'd say, never give up the baseline. And then when the players get a lot better, they're like, give up the baseline, drive him to the baseline. It's actually something Jimmy Butler does as well as anybody in the league. And it's even better because he knows Bam is kind of trailing it. and gets parallel to Butler and then finds the seam or the gap in between where the big is trying to shut off the baseline drive, but then also worry about Bam behind him. Butler and Bam have it down as well as anybody in the league, and nobody seems to be able to figure it out. In this case, Reeves is driving to keep the ball, but he actually veers towards the paint a little bit, so it wasn't a straight line baseline drive, but what he's doing is he's creating himself some space to still finish at the hoop instead of getting stuck underneath it. Just something I noticed. Smart there. All right. The Lakers defense was actually terrific in the fourth quarter. They held Denver to 19 points. There were a few possessions, especially late, where it's like Denver got into their action so late. And there were times, obviously, in previous years with the Nuggets where I thought, is there enough there offensively, or do they become too predictable in this two-man game that you know they're going to run the whole time? Well, it doesn't matter now because they have it down to perfection, and every role player hits every open shot. And that was another story of this series where even if you thought you could get Jokic on the slow night, which they got in game 3, at least in the beginning, they could shut down Murray, which they thought they had in game 2 until he went crazy in the fourth quarter. But consistently throughout the series, the others made those looks. And those looks are going to be there because Jokic is that hard to deal with. You're constantly... It's not the same as the Steph Curry gravity, but it's the same principle in that you're always kind of worried about what he's going to do, which takes you away from whatever your primary thing is. And there's going to be times where you're going to see people wide open because you think, hey, we've got to help there. Or once it's on the catch, or once he puts it on the floor, like, we got to come over and help. We got to come off this, like, find the guy to come off of to help. And when everybody else makes their shots, this team is really special. So, even with that said, I thought the Lakers defense fought really hard. Tristan Thompson minutes, did not see that coming. Granted, he was absolutely mauling Jokic before the catch. They're not going to call it. Keep doing it. And Tristan had the dunk where, yeah, I'll admit, I was like, oh, that's right. The dunk. And then he started kind of talking shit. But whatever, he went out there and fought, and they needed it at that point. But the LeBron, Van Gundy cycle of bad possessions, I almost feel guilty being critical of LeBron, but at that time, that's what it took. So I saw people giving Van Gundy a bunch of shit about, it wasn't complaining, it was simple. Hey, the best offense is when LeBron breaks the paint, gets some kind of touch. There was an incredible play to Anthony Davis. LeBron got deep, threw it to him. That made it a 2-point game in the fourth quarter. And you're thinking, all right, they might have a chance here. Let's run through some quick plays here towards the end of the game and kind of summarize what happened here. I mentioned that pass to Anthony Davis. That made it 102-101. Jokic had 2 offensive fouls in a row. At one point, the Lakers left the paint wide open on the first one. LeBron switched over. You saw it coming a mile away. There was no way they weren't going to call that a charge. And even though I don't like it in a bigger philosophical conversation about charges, it was the right call at that time. Then it was weird because I think Jokic got pissed about the charge and then just barreled into LeBron and picked up his 5th foul, which was kind of dumb at that point. The Lakers shooting from 3 that was absurd in the first half was not in the second half. I think they started the second half 0-7, 0-8 from 3. At 4-minute mark, I went, all right, LeBron is spent. He's spent. And that's why you're not getting paint touches every single possession. So even though it's the better offense, it's just not realistic. And we can sit there on the couch and be like, why doesn't this guy drive every single time? Why doesn't this guy go down on the block? Why doesn't it's because we consistently, I don't know, overrate, underrate, and eliminate would be wrong, but we're not practical about how exhausting basketball can be in these moments at the highest level, realizing they're going to be possessions. Even guys in their 20s are like, I'm too tired to be able to take it to the hoop right now or set up down there. A catch is one thing, a drive is different, but I thought at 4 minutes he was still kind of spent. There was an Anthony Gordon cut that was almost like a tight end delay at the goal line. It was beautiful. He knew exactly what was happening. Jokic was waiting for it. And when you have Gordon cutting against a smaller perimeter player, because what the Lakers did is they switched up their coverage where they wanted LeBron on Jamal Murray and then AD on Jokic, because once they ran into their switch, at least that point, LeBron would still be on Jokic and then Davis may be further away from Murray, but they just liked it better in the switch. And I actually thought it was a smart thing by Ham to do. But then off of that, you realize that Aaron Gordon now is going to be going against the third biggest guy now with the Lakers. Depending on how the matchup works there, it's a much easier catch from him. He gets the end one. They saw it a mile away. They made eye contact. It was beautiful. And another point to be made, it's almost like the drive point. Good stuff happens when you keep moving. I know I talk about it way too much, but just seeing players cut off the ball versus other players that just, when they give the ball up, they don't want to do anything anymore. Duncan Robinson is one of the best off-ball cutters in the entire league. He is. Somebody should tell the Celtics. So it's 107-102 at this point. LeBron had a little burst there, got a layup, gets the 40 points, 107-104. Jokic throws in the Larry Bird, originally called a 2, a 3, after another great defensive possession by the Lakers. That felt like it kind of broke their back, makes it 110-104. But Reeves hit a 3. Remember, they had to go back and change it. So we're still talking about a possession game. Then there was a play where Anthony Gordon was waiting to take free throws, and it took forever. Part of it was reviewing if the 2 or 3. And as I'm watching all this, the game came to like almost a stop. And I started thinking, like, this is actually really good for LeBron here, right? Like, this is good because he's going to get a little time. He also had that possession earlier where he brought it across half court, but like walked it up and waited forever. And I think it was him just trying to find rest inside of the game. There were a couple possessions there where I thought, all right, are they going to figure this out? Because they're actually getting like rest time during the game. And it felt like they were freezing Gordon, and the rest weren't doing it, but that's what it felt like, as Gordon's waiting to take this massive free throw. And if I'm Mike Malone, I'd be losing it, but he had already gotten a tech because he straight up said, fuck you to the ref in the first half. Like, he was waiting to get the tech. The tech was giving him a leash, and then Malone just let it fly. And I was like, okay, he wanted that one. And then the ref, if it were a regular season game, I think he might have gotten tossed. At 111, still a game here. Jokic finds a way to just drive through everybody against AD from the left side. And I'm just at home going, how? How does a man this big, who his quickness doesn't matter, his lack of quickness, it's every herky-jerky, weird angle, weird release. I used to think Dirk was the best bad foundation, great release player. Like, he could have everything wrong and then find a way to get square. Jokic doesn't even get square, and he still figures out somehow to finish this one off. LeBron, after 113, 111, really took forever to get the possession going and ended up out of bounds. They had to inbound it with 3.5. He catches it on what could have been a handoff to Reeves. He drives left side. It was a brutal attempt. It was, talk about hard. They didn't get a good look. And at the end, when he wanted to try to find a way to tie it, he drove, and Murray anticipated it perfectly, came over to help, almost tied him up for a jump ball, and LeBron wasn't able to get a clean look at the rim. Denver wins. They sweep the Lakers. Okay, so a couple things that I'd like to hit on here after the fact. Denver and the doubts. I will admit I have a hard time with any team that hasn't really done anything before collectively in the playoffs. Not doubt specifically about Denver this year, but them winning the West is not surprising. I picked them against the Lakers, but I wasn't like overwhelmed with them. I wasn't like, man, it's Denver and everybody else. And that's certainly how the playoffs have played out. And when I look back kind of the recent resume, and then for this year, they were 53-29. They were the 1 seed in what was an absurd year for the West. The road record was always a little concerning to me. They were 6th in point differential in the NBA. They were 46-19 at one point. They closed the season from March 8th on 7-10. After they lost April 5th to the Rockets, Malone called the team soft and said, quote, if that's how we're going to play, we're going to be out in the first round. Denver just mailed it in the last month. And unfortunately, I think it cost Jokic an MVP as well for him, although he doesn't seem to care about any of this stuff. If you go back to recent years, back to kind of the point of like, had this team ever really done much? And there's some excuses in there as well that are valid. But in 19, they had 54 wins. They were the 2nd seed. They lost to Portland in 7. No shame in that. Portland had 53 wins. They were the 3 seed. They were only a game behind them. In 20, they were the 3 seed. They lost the Western Conference Finals to the Lakers. And I always would look at their defense going, I know they're pretty good. And we realized like Jokic is becoming something special. I wasn't sure where Murray would be in the ranking of guards, although that's going to take a jump, even if it's not real, because that's what happens. You go deep in the playoffs. But they were 16th in D that year. The next year, the Suns in 4 in the second round. They were 12th in D. Last year, they were a 6 seed. That team was not good other than Jokic. Look at who played the majority of the games, all the injuries that they had, and they lost 4-1 to the Warriors. So there wasn't really a deep playoff run despite the Western Conference Finals, but still to lose in 5 games, you felt like, okay, they're right there. They're on the cusp of this. Whereas last year, Phoenix, make all the jokes you want, they'd played in the finals, they came back, they were even better last year. You looked at some of the numbers, you're like, do you realize how good they've been this season? Or is this kind of a hangover of them blowing a lead against the Milwaukee Bucks and all the Chris Paul jokes? And I think it was both. And then they have even worse Dallas jokes now. But there felt like something that was more solid to build on moving forward for a team like that last year. Whereas Denver, I just wasn't sure if they'd be this dominant because I didn't think they were necessarily dominant this season. And that has not been the case. All the doubt is gone, and the belt is going to be Jokic's here. And now you're going to go into next season where it's going to be him being talked about, unless Jimmy Butler were able to do the impossible one more time, which I'm not going to pick. I'm going to tell you right now. All right, so the other part that I feel great about for Jokic is just what happens when you go deep like this and you take out a Lakers team, because there's another element. Like, it's not just beating somebody in the West, it's beating the Lakers and then sweeping them. And I think there's a lot of, I don't know if it's listeners, no, because I'm never quite sure where every interest lies for people that are cool enough to check in on the podcast. But I imagine a lot of you are super into the NBA, into the League Pass, but I'm sure there's plenty of you that are not. And I'd have to think there were thousands of NBA fans over the last week going, this guy is that good. Like, he really is that good. And I think Malone, who's been pretty aggressive in some of the commentary, which was weird that he was doing it, after game 1 and game 2, still some work to do in the Western Conference Finals, but he's kind of letting everybody have it. And I get it. I also, like I said, with the resume for the team, it wasn't like they'd been in the finals a couple of years and now they were taking the next step as this young group. But for the bullshit that Jokic has dealt with for the last 2 years, just in some corners, by simply being suggested, not just, hey, he's getting the MVP vote or he's won 2 MVPs, it was laughed at by some people in basketball, on TV, not on TV, to even think that Jokic was at the same level as some of the other guys. And if he wins a title, the question is going to be the other way around. It's like, wait, is anyone else actually at his level? And so I'm happy for him, and I'm happy for the Nuggets, because specific to the Jokic conversation the last 2 years, there's been a lot of really shitty things said about a guy who is one of the game's best. And it's not debatable.